Tennessee's first proposed choice lane project would construct new optional choice lanes on I-24 between Nashville and Murfreesboro. The proposed I-24 Southeast Choice Lane project would address travel time reliability and regional connectivity issues along approximately 26 miles of I-24 by providing passenger vehicle and transit riders with an effective transportation alternative. To present the Choice Lane project, we have Rebecca Hammonds, who is the TDOT Public-Private Partnership Communication Officer, as well as Brian Ledford, who is the Public-Private Partnership Executive Director. And for general TDOT projects, we also have Jay Norris, who's the Region 3 Director, and his team members here. So I won't turn it over to this Rebecca.
I'm Brian Ledford. This is Rebecca. I just want to kick off by giving a little preface of why are we doing this? Why are we talking about user fees for a major project like this? And just to set the stage, if you see the full outline of the state of Tennessee, that's supposed to represent about a $30+ billion need of projects that have been identified. These are good projects. That doesn't count all of the annual state of good repair, maintenance of our pavements and our bridges. This is $30 billion plus of good projects. The entire corridor that we're studying, that we're doing NEPA environmental work on right now, is probably a $5 billion plus project. The red circle represents TDOT's annual budget, $1.2 billion. That's supported by gas taxes. That's our total annual work program. About half of that is state of good repair, resurfacing, bridges, mowing. The other half is for projects. So about a $600 million a year budget to address projects, the need. The I-24 corridor obviously is not going to get done based on that type of a funding paradigm. There are a lot of projects out there that we need, and a lot of them are in the area of Murfreesboro. They're simply not funded under the existing scheme. And so what a lot of other states have done is look to the private sector to finance mega projects. And I say this is a mega project because the biggest project that TDOT has ever awarded is $186 million. The first phase of this corridor will probably be $2.5 billion. So we're talking about more than 10 times the size of the largest project that TDOT's ever awarded, just to give you the scale of this. So in a public-private partnership, our enabling legislation allowed for the charging of user fees to pay for additional optional lanes, and that's what we're talking about. All the lanes that are there today will be there when this project is done. They'll remain free to use. These are additional lanes where folks can choose to use the lanes to pay a user fee, and that's how the private partner recoups their investment. So that's the main framework that talks about the why and the reality of funding. And I will turn it over to Rebecca to talk about things that are more fun than what I just talked about.
Thank you, Brian. He's going to stay with us as long as possible before he heads out to another meeting. But as they mentioned, my name's Rebecca Hammonds, the P3 Communications Officer. I'm not going to take us back to the beginning. We've heard the why. We know why this is so important and hopefully how we plan to deliver it with our public-private partnership. But what I am going to ask, just to kind of get a base knowledge, is how many folks in the room, if you could just raise your hand, have actually experienced or used a choice lane? So in theory, an express lane somewhere. Okay. Majority of folks. This is not a new concept. So I'm not going to, bore you with how an express lanes work. I'll just hit the high points and then we can take questions as we go through. Speaking on a public-private partnership. So last year, the Transportation Modernization Act passed. It did several things, but really it enabled the use of public-private partnerships. As Brian mentioned, the state will enter into a partnership with the private sector, and they will do all of those things there. They will design, build, finance, operate, and maintain this facility. A few things I want to make clear. Yes, they will do all of those things, but the state will keep ownership of the facility itself. Throughout the years of the contract, that private sector partner, though, will be doing those items so that it's not being done by the state. It's a risk revenue model. So majority of the risk is put onto that private sector so that the state can deliver a project of this size. It also does those things there that you see. It frees up state dollars to spend on other projects. As Brian mentioned, this is a situation where we would not be able to fund projects or project of this size. We would really not be able to tackle the congestion along this corridor without this model and without leveraging the private sector. It also, I'll point out that last point, accelerates the project delivery by leveraging the private sector. We can bring innovation to the table and make sure that a project of this size, of its complexity, won't take us an additional 10 years to deliver, something that may have happened if the state tried to take on in a traditional delivery method. So we all know what an express lane is. Well, what are choice lanes? Essentially, they are the same thing, but we want to stress that this is new, additional travel lanes. We are essentially widening I-24. You'll see it's 2 lanes in both directions. That's what we're going to be looking for and doing on the corridor. It is price-managed lanes. They will be used to provide more reliable trip times in exchange for that user fee. And then, again, they're designed, built, financed, operated, and maintained by that private sector partner. Since we've all seen and or used these, I'm not going to hone in on this point. This is what it looks like. We will aim for something similar to the choice lanes in Virginia photo there with painted stripes and they're called flexible delineators. Some folks don't necessarily know what that means, but if you're in transportation, it's the large plastic sticks that divide those lanes. So project benefits of a project like this. I want to hone in on 2 things here. That first one in orange, less traffic. The lanes that are there already will stay there and they will remain free because these are 2 additional lanes of traffic. So really, the overall benefit for everyone is that there will be less congestion because you will see travelers or drivers get into the choice lanes, relieving congestion even in those free lanes. The other one is that one, the middle in navy, for trip times. Again, managing lanes, having an active traffic management system with the user fees, it will provide reliable trip times for those who choose choice lanes. So transit buses will be able to operate in these lanes for free. We are working with WeGo to ensure that they understand the benefits that they'll be able to have from these lanes. I want to focus in on a few here. Of course, more reliable trip times for transit riders and users. They'll be able to utilize that just like drivers. Improved transit movements and performance. In other states, they saw an improvement in the actual route times. One route, specifically in Georgia, actually was showing up early often. So they actually had to adjust their routes and their route timing because they were getting to their destination so early on such a regular basis. And lastly, the bottom right corner, decreased congestion. Because of the benefits and the improvements that they see, more people will choose transit. And so again, we anticipate decreased congestion, hopefully because more people will choose transit instead of their single occupancy vehicles. These are just some statistics from other states. 73% more customers due to improved travel time reliability. That's huge. A 68% reduction in travel times and ridership quadrupled in first 5 years. Things that we expect to see here in Tennessee. User fees. again, I'm not going to stay on this topic very long. We know how they work, but just something to point out, this is a variable dynamic pricing model, meaning the way that we want to guarantee or make trip times more reliable is by adjusting that price or user fee price. So they will adjust by the time of day, by demand because of congestion. So in theory, you'll pay a different amount at different times of day, but it will be because we've got to make sure that traffic is still flowing in those choice lanes. This user fee, like policy and methodology, will be set by the Transportation Modernization Board, which was enacted by the TMA last year.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
Are there other areas that have implemented the variable rates? Because Virginia and Florida is a fixed rate.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, it is something that we see often in the P3 model and choice lanes, but you can speak to that more.
It's really the difference in where a state has built a toll road or they built express lanes with either their own funding or a different funding model. In a revenue risk model with the private sector, it's pretty much always a dynamic pricing model. And we see that in I-77, in Charlotte, North Carolina. Georgia just led a big project, I-66 in Virginia. So these are public-private partnerships where it's that revenue risk model really requires the use of dynamic pricing. The other element of dynamic pricing is we'll have a minimum speed requirement in the contract with the developer. So we'll say, you must maintain 45 miles per hour in those lanes, or we'll fine you. And so the only way they have to ensure that they're maintaining that minimum speed is to raise the user fee such that it doesn't bog down. So that's how we guarantee the reliable trip times, is using that user fee to control demand, I guess is one way to put it.
Will that fee still be a flat fee even though it's variable?
No.
Like if I hop on the interstate in Murfreesboro and it says
What you see on the gantry when you pass under, whatever the sign says, that's what you'll pay.
per mile,
It's typically a segment from gantry to gantry. So you would, whatever you see as you pass under the sign, that is what you will pay to some further point. And then you'll see another sign and you'll have the option of either staying in or not. It's always your choice as to whether you pay the amount on the sign or you choose not to.
But I think to answer your point, you will have pre-notification, like you will know. So it's not like you're going to pass that point or that mile or 2 miles and unknowingly get onto another trip that's $5, versus your $2. It will be advertised on a gantry that you pass under, and each driver will be aware of what that particular segment will cost.
I think in some other states, you actually see 2 segments ahead. You'll see 2
okay.
numbers.
See?
And we're early in this, but those will be things that we'll work out, not just with our developer, but with our own, folks and with FHWA as to what those signs look like, because we want uniformity.
Yeah.
This is not just a project, this is a program. We're going to do this elsewhere, and whatever we do on this first one really sets the stage for what we do going forward.
So
Thank
to
you.
Jamie's question, SunPass in Florida, that's a variable rate as well. That's a public-private partnership. What about Dallas, North Dallas Tollway? Is that
There are several revenue risk P3 in place in North Tarrant, NTE.
Okay.
LBJ is fairly recent, yes, sir.
So this is a common model is what you're
Yes, sir.
saying?
This has been tried, and frankly, some of the other states that have gone before us in the last 10, 15, 20 years, they've stubbed their toe on some things, and we're trying to avoid some of the mistakes they've made and make sure that we've learned from those.
But I guess what I'm getting at is I've never really noticed a difference in the rate. Honestly, when I'm in Dallas or Florida or Virginia or Pennsylvania, it seems like the rate is basically the same, whether it's 7 a.m. in the morning or 6 o'clock at night? Maybe they raise it a little bit, but if they do, how much do they raise it? What have you seen?
You know, I hate to throw out numbers. I mean, we've seen some rates in off-peak times that are, you know, they want somebody to come over there and pay 50 cents or $1.
Yeah. During peak time, it might be $1.50.
During peak times, it may be north of that.
Yeah.
It's all about keeping the right number of folks in those lanes so that they're reliable. And the only real throttle that you have on that is supply and demand. It's that dynamic pricing model.
Okay.
So I drive for a whole month to Nashville, and then at the end of the month, I just get a bill?
Yes. Well, what we'd like you to do is sign up for a transponder.
Yeah.
The transponders used to look like a radar detector or something. Now it's a sticker, RFID, and on your windshield. And we're going to be doing a big campaign to push those transponders out because, you know, it's not a bill by mail. It's not a license plate lookup. It's a much smoother transaction.
We're still working to nail down the policies and details around all of that. What you've seen in places like Texas and other states is it's essentially like a card that you can load, an account that you can load.
Right.
And then each trip you take is a charge onto your already preloaded account. I'm sorry. I think, if it's, did I see another hand? I was going to keep going, but I thought I saw another hand pop up. Okay. All right. Thank you for those questions. Those were great questions, especially while Brian was still with us. So just to get specific for the Southeast Corridor, just a project overview of where we are. It's obviously the construction of those new optional lanes, and this map shows you the 26 miles that we are currently studying between Nashville and Murfreesboro. We are currently just in the preliminary design phase in environmental studies. Upcoming activities are our environmental documents, policy decisions, RFQ, and then continued stakeholder engagement. Okay, and let me hop out. So this is a project visualization. This just gives you a look at what the project will, oh, there's all the audio. There we go.
One thing to note as you watch this, something that will be new to Tennesseans are the, dedicated access points for the choice lanes. So if the choice lanes are in the center of the road, you'll actually have on-ramps and off-ramps in the center of the interstate now. You'll have your existing on-ramps and off-ramps to the out, but there's one right there. So those access points really allow you not only to choose whether you use the choice lanes, but you actually get on and off in a different way so that you're not weaving in and out of general purpose traffic.
What if I'm in the choice lane and I use a ramp to get on it, and then they're charging an obscene amount, so I want to get off? Do I have to get off on the ramp and then?
You'll see the same decision, you'll see the same sign and be able to make the decision before you use that ramp to get on.
Right, but say I get on, and then a few exits down, I want to get off.
And then it's showing an at-grade merge in and out.
Just like it was right there.
We're not going to trap you in there.
Would it be hard for a policeman to stop me for speeding?
These
Important to you, man?
These are Tennessee roads. They'll always be Tennessee TDOT right away, and our law enforcement partners will enforce the law. Those little white sticks aren't going to mean anything.
It seems like it just would be more dangerous to stop me and give me a ticket. Can I go faster in those lanes? I mean, some people get on them when they see them. I've seen it in Georgia. They'll get on one, and then before I know it, I'm up here, and they are just zooming past me in that lane.
The law enforcement will enforce speed limits, and there will be shoulders available to them inside the choice lanes.
Yeah, we've been having, so I mentioned continued stakeholder engagement. We have already had 2 different meetings with task forces in Nashville and in Rutherford County. We're continuously talking with our law enforcement partners because we know that's a major point that you're making, right? We want to make sure that all lanes are safe. And, we're working with them to hear what's best practice from them, but to also make sure they understand how these will operate. So to answer your question, yes, they will have access. They will be enforcing it. We're just making sure to communicate with them on what that looks like.
Do ambulances and emergency vehicles, they use it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. The transit buses and first responders will all operate for free in the lanes. Yeah. So early design, as I mentioned, that's the phase we're in now. We have what's called 2 alternative plans, design alternatives. This is the first one. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, only because these are on our website. Our virtual meeting room, where all of these documents currently are on our website. You can go through, take a deep dive into what these look like. They will show direct access, as you mentioned, from 24. They'll show exclusive choice lane access points. They'll show whether or not these interchanges are entrance and exit, or just entrance only or exit only. So there are a few differences between the two. Thank you, Brian. And the second one does not have an access point at East Thompson Lane. It does not have the interchange at Waldron Road. And then instead of South Rocky Fork Road, it has a choice lanes only interchange at Almaville Road. Again, this is all preliminary. Everything at this point is still subject to change. We're working out of these 2 design alternatives to present a final preferred alternative. That will be the design plan that we take into talks with that concessionaire after our RFQ and RFP process, and then those conversations will continue. They will bring things like design alternatives and specs to the table as well. So again, we fully anticipate it, honestly, to change from these designs.
Not to interrupt,
No, it's okay.
what do you, someone may have asked this while I got up, but what do you think this will do to proposed new interchanges on 24? I know we have one we're looking at, Smyrna has one, but how will this impact those?
Not at all. So we...
Can we get that in writing?
Jay is over there probably shaking his head over there. We are working. I'll say a couple things and then I may turn it over to Jay. He may have some additional info. So current interchanges will not be touched. The general purpose interchanges that are currently here will remain general purpose. They will not be, nothing will be converted into choice lane. No one will lose access this way. We also are making sure to work specifically to not, what is the term? Corner ourselves. We want to make sure that this project, this is a contract for 30 or 40 or 50 years. So we want to make sure that this design is something that can have the longevity of its own contract. We will make sure that it makes room for things like interchanges and improvements and other projects that we know are in our other plans, our 10-year plan. Jay, was there anything you would like to add on some of those current interchanges?
So I'll be brief, Mayor, Council, it's good to
Thanks,
see
Jay.
y'all. I know that both the city of Murfreesboro and the town of Smyrna have approached us about interchange interest. We've had discussions with y'all about those. I think the thing that we need to keep in mind is the choice lane program is a very large financial, long-term deal, and there's a little bit of road wrapped up in it. And part of the deal is the concessionaire is they don't want to have a lot of modifications to the system because it would threaten their revenue. And so if we're going to do that, we would need to make that part of the financial deal we make with them. So as Brian and Rebecca Bush mentioned, we are very early in this process. I don't want y'all to have anxiety about that. Like we can have discussions about it. It just doesn't need to be forgotten. That's all I would say.
Anything that is currently in the 10-year plan
Oh, yeah.
will stay in the plan. This is not threatening anything that is currently in our
Correct.
TDOT 10-year plan. I'm sorry if I misunderstood.
No, that's great. Thanks, Jay.
This is just a quick look at the proposed typical section. This is an at-grade look. You just, basics, you have your general purpose lane, your HOV lane, your buffer, and then your 2 lanes of choice lanes. This is a look at the proposed typical section for the elevated lanes. There will be areas, I'm sure many of you know, there's some right-of-way constraints that our design teams are looking at and working around. The answer in some areas will be elevated. Again, all of this is still subject to change, but this is what it could look like in the future. And this is our proposed timeline. We are here. You are here. We're in environmental studies. So we have been having those public meetings for our environmental impact studies. And I'll show you that here in a minute, but this just lays out a pretty straightforward look of, we had our early environmental studies. Those will continue into next year with our public hearings, RFQ, and then even further out to give you kind of a forecast of where we're going. We hope to have commercial close in 26, and hopefully all going according to plan, construction beginning in 27.
How long would it take once it starts construction?
I'm going to answer your question, but not answer your question only because we don't know.
Highway 99 times 5.
We hope, because of the P3 model, we know it will be faster than what we ever could accomplish. So we're looking at possibly 5+ years. Again, there really is no way of knowing because we don't even have a final design, meaning we also don't know all of the additional things. We are eyeballing 2031 or 2032 for completion. This is just a look at what was shared at the public meetings. Again, all of this can be found on our website, going through the divisions and what we were studying, the impacts, and then, of course, the reason why feedback is so important. There's the obvious reason of it is a vital part of our NEPA process. And then the other reason is what I just said, is that this is the time where your voice can actually have an impact on the project. So my plea as a comms officer to you all is that we need your help. Speak to your constituents about this project. We have been in talks with the media. We have things on social media as well. But whether you are for or against it, conversations matter, and we want to make sure that people are informed. And social media is not always the best place for everyone to get their information. So what we want to do, and the reason we're here today, is so that we can equip you with the correct information, and hopefully you can pass along as you see fit. So I think that, and then just a way to connect. QR code takes you to the website, and then below are all of the ways that you can connect with our team. So with that, I will say I'm happy to take some questions. I know many of them were answered. I will answer them to my best ability, but thank you so much for having us.
I've got one, and 840 may be the reason, but it looks like both plans started north of 840, and Murfreesboro being Nashville's largest suburb. Is 840 the reason why it's just not easy to get the lanes over or under 840? Like, could we run it to Medical Center?
So I can't speak to the reasoning as far as 840 is concerned, but I can speak to a lot of the reasoning of this is what our traffic data showed us when they saw the most congestion. A lot of times you see it between Briley and even Waldron or Sam Ridley. So we tackled the corridor really based on our traffic and revenue data and where we saw the worst congestion in our cities. It also is about making sure to hear back from the private sector and industry and making sure we've been saying, quote, right size the project. You know, if we make it too large or too small, then a private sector partner may not want to partner with us. So we have to make sure to take that into account as well.